Welcome to Dweller of the Dark.
We are wicked wizards demanding the resurrection of the yellowed and blackened bones of forgotten masters of horror, science fiction, fantasy, and beyond. Subscribe, comment, like, or I'll send the vampire Helen to rip your heart out. Writers, poets, songwriters, reach out to us if you want to be part of our growing pile of bones. Writing, ghostwriting services on Upwork and Fiverr. We've had a 98% successful completion rate for projects. Contact links below. Children of Horror, Legion of Ghouls. The season of Halloween has arrived. Each night, we will present a tale, song, or poem in the ghoulish spirit of the season. For day 25, we present Robert Bloch's The Bogeyman Will Get You. Devilishly devoted to horror and Halloween. May your souls always be.
Robert Bloch's The Bogeyman Will Get You.
The first time Nancy met Philip Ames, he didn't even notice her. Of course, you really couldn't blame him. After all, she was only 15, just a kid. But that was last year, and this time, it was different. Nancy's folks went back to Beaver Lake for the summer in June, and she could hardly wait to find out if Philip Ames still had his cottage down the road. Eddie Schuster said he was up, all right. She said Mr. Ames lived at the cottage all year. Everybody knows how cold it gets at the lake in winter. Practically out of this world. But Hetty Schuster knew because she talked to Mr. Prentice down at the store, and he said so. That Prentice was like an old woman. He had his nose in everybody's business. The first chance she got, Nancy took a walk up the road past Philip Ames's cottage. The door was closed, and there were curtains on the windows, so she didn't see anything. But then, Mr. Ames wasn't around much in the daytime. Practically a hermit. Hetty Schuster said it was because he was writing his PhD thesis for the university. He only shined around at night. But after all, that's the best time, isn't it? Hetty Schuster said it was just like her to make such a snotty remark to Nancy, knowing how it would burn her up. Not that Nancy ever tried to hide the way she felt about Philip Ames. Why should she? After all, she was 16. She had a mind of her own, and Philip Ames was really something. Nancy always liked tall men, and Philip Ames was positively statuesque. He had such luscious black hair and dark eyes, and his skin was so white. That came from not getting any sun at the lake. She wondered how he would look in bathing trunks and if he would spend much time with her folks again this year. He was very friendly with them the last season. He seemed to like Ralph, but then everybody liked her dad. And Laura was glad to have company. Of course, if her mother even suspected how Nancy felt about the man, she would be positively furious. But she needn't know yet. Not unless that Hetty Schuster gave it away, and she better not or Nancy would kill her. Hetty knew some boys around on the other side of the lake who had a roadster, and she wanted Nancy to double date some night. But the first few evenings Nancy stayed at the cottage. Of course, she was hoping Philip Ames would come over, and she dressed very carefully. No bobby socks or kid stuff, only her best slacks and one of those luscious sweaters Laura bought for her at Saks. Those sweaters really did something for her, and it was about time Mr. Philip Ames found it out. But he didn't come over. And he didn't come over. And it was almost a week now, and Nancy was going stark raving goony because Hetty kept telling her what she was missing not coming along. And then Philip Ames came over. He was even better than she'd remembered. She'd forgotten all about that deep voice of his, a real man's voice. And he didn't laugh all the time like those repulsive young icks Hetty was so excited about. He really was reserved. You could tell he was deep. He was glad to see Ralph and Laura, but he didn't smile. Then Laura said, "You remember our Nancy, don't you, Phil?" And he looked at her and nodded, and then he just looked. Honestly, it just sent shivers through her. You'd think she was a mere infant standing there and trying to keep from blushing, but he didn't seem to notice that. He noticed other things, though, because when they all went out on the porch and sat down, he sat next to her and asked her all sorts of questions. It wasn't that he was trying to be polite. Nancy could tell the difference. For the first time, he was looking at her as a woman. She knew it, and she would never forget it, never. Someday, they would both remember this moment together, someday. Ralph and Laura kept interrupting Philip with questions about his thesis. He said it was coming along, and he hoped to finish it this summer. Then Ralph insisted on telling him about his old construction job, and Nancy knew he was just enduring it all. He wasn't really interested a bit. Philip asked her why she didn't have much of a tan, and she said she wasn't going out much these days. "I don't know what's gotten into her," Laura butted in. "She just mopes around the cottage all day reading. I wish she'd get some fresh air." "Oh, Mother," Nancy said. You'd think Laura was talking about a 10-year-old child or something. "I don't get out very much myself these days," Philip said, rescuing her. "We serious students have to stick together. What say we go for a hike tomorrow evening? Like to see what's going on at the pavilion across the lake, Nancy?" Would she? Imagine showing up with Philip when Hetty Schuster and her crowd was around. Why, it would be. "No objections, I hope?" Philip was asking Ralph and Laura now, and it was okay, of course. "All right, young lady. See you about 8 then." That was all that mattered. Of course, Ralph had to kid her later about her new boyfriend, and the next afternoon, Laura made her promise on her bended knees that she'd be back before 11. "After all, we don't really know very much about Mr. Ames. He seems like a very fine young man, but please, Mother, I hope you don't tell me about the bees and flowers." Laura looked just a little bit shocked, but she didn't say any more, and Nancy went back to work on her hair. She scarcely took time out for supper because the upsweep was so difficult. Her hair wasn't really long enough for an upsweep yet, but it added years to her appearance, and it was worth it. After all, Philip was older, 27, 28, certainly not 30. Maybe she could ask him tonight, or in a couple of nights, because there would be other nights. The whole summer was ahead of them. Their summer. At 7:45, Nancy was out on the porch waiting. It would be just childish to pull that old gag about not being ready yet. Philip didn't deserve such treatment. So she was all ready when he came up the path. "Good evening, my dear." Yes, he said it. "My dear." Nancy was glad he couldn't see her face plainly in the shadows. The sun was just setting. She started down the path to join him. "I'm all ready," she said. Philip sort of backed away and looked down. I'm sorry," he mumbled. "Came around to tell you I couldn't make it tonight. Something came up all of a sudden. Oh! I hope you understand. Why did he keep backing away from her? What was the matter? Well, I'll have to be running along now. Some other time, perhaps. Nancy just stood there with her mouth open. It was a brush off, all right. Who did he think he was, anyway? Was he crazy? She wanted to say something but couldn't seem to think. It made her so mad, she almost cried. The tears came into her eyes, and she saw Philip sort of swimming away from her. The moon was just rising over the lake now, cutting the darkness. Philip was disappearing down the path. All at once, he was gone, and then she noticed this thing flying low along the trees. It squeaked at her and came for her head. It came straight from where Philip had been standing, and when it got close, she could smell it, all rubbery, and see its little red glaring eyes. It was a black bat. Nancy didn't scream. She didn't make a sound, just ran straight into the house and up to the bedroom. She didn't begin to cry until she had her mouth biting into the pillow. Laura was really swell about the whole thing. She didn't say a word. She pretended she never even noticed. Nancy would have died if she did. Besides, what was there to say? The brush off wasn't so bad. Nancy got over that. But when she was lying there in bed in the middle of the night, she got the other idea. And you wouldn't even dare whisper about things like that. But it had to be that way. He couldn't have just stood her up on the spur of the moment. He wanted to be with her. Oh, she was being silly, frightened of a bat. Just because Philip Ames lived up there all year and nobody saw him in the daytime, and he broke a date when the moon came up, and all at once this bat, maybe somebody would know something. That old woman of a Mr. Prentice down at the store. Of course, you couldn't come right out and ask him that. Then Nancy thought of a way. The next morning, she went down to the store and gave Mr. Prentice the works. We're going to have Mr. Ames over for dinner this week, and Mother wanted to find out if there's something special he might like. You know, some kind of canned stuff. Mr. Prentice said it. Then she knew he would. He don't trade here at all. Never seen him in my place. Yes, Philip Ames lived here all the year round, but he never came out in the daytime, and he never bought any food. Never. And it was a lie about having him over for dinner, because come to think of it, Nancy had never seen him eat anything. That proved it. But she had to be sure. Weren't there other tests? In the afternoon, Nancy made a date with Hetty Schuster to visit the boys across the lake. She was glad because when she got home after dark, Ralph said he'd met Philip. Philip was coming over tonight for a while. So Nancy was able to tell him she already had a date and wouldn't be there because she just simply could not break it. Yes, she was glad. She couldn't face him tonight after what happened and after what she thought. And also, that meant tonight would be a good chance to do what she planned. If Philip was out, she could go to the cottage. It wasn't easy. Hetty was just ready to blow her top when Nancy broke the date, but she didn't ask any questions. And it was only about 9 when Nancy sneaked back past the cottage. Philip was in there, all right. Nancy went up the path, then to his place. It was dark, and there were clouds over the moon. She almost fell flat on her face before she got to the door. It was locked anyway, but the window was open. Nancy took off the screen and crawled inside. The cottage was just a cottage. She had a pencil flashlight and held it down low while she looked around, but there was nothing to see. Nothing! Of course, the bed hadn't been slept in. At least it was made pretty well for a man, and he didn't have any dishes or stuff, not even a camp stove in the place. There were suits in the closet and a drawer full of clothes. It gave Nancy a funny feeling to open his bureau and feel the shirts and socks and stuff, all lying there in stacks. Most of it was brand new. There was no mirror above the bureau. There was no mirror in the bathroom or anywhere else. Of course, there wouldn't be but she had to be sure. Nancy finally went over to the work table. There was a typewriter on it and a big stack of manuscript on one side. Maybe he was writing a thesis after all. She ruffled through the pile of papers, looking for the title page. It was there. Some notes upon the empirical approach to demonology in the modern world. Somehow, that shocked her more than anything else. It seemed to all tie in. Demonology in the modern world today? He was writing about demons and things. Nancy knew now that she'd have to do something, tell somebody. Yes, that was it. Tonight, after Philip left, she'd tell Laura. Tell her that Philip didn't eat and there were no mirrors and he was so pale and nobody saw him in the daytime and a bat flew out of the sunset. Tell her that Philip was a vampire. Nancy never knew how she managed to get through that night after she told Laura. Laura was afraid she would go into hysterics until she managed to deadpan. If Laura wanted to take it that way, let her. Some people are just too superior for their own good. But Nancy wouldn't stop now. She couldn't. If her own mother acted that way, how could you expect anyone else to? There was only one thing left to do, and that was see it through. At least Laura wouldn't say anything. She positively wouldn't dare. So the next night, when she heard that Philip might drop in again, Nancy excused herself just in time. She waited outside until she saw Philip come up the path. It was cloudy again, but that suited her. Then she headed straight for the cottage, down the path. After she finished there, Nancy came back to their place. Philip was still talking with Laura and Ralph. She could hear him through the window. "You're afraid of the dark, aren't you?" "Oh, but you are. I know all about you. Do you understand? You were afraid of the dark when you were a child, not because of robbers or thieves or murderers. Children don't think of such things. You were afraid of the dark because of the bogeyman. That's the term your parents used, bogeyman. One of those smart, sophisticated, grown-up terms designed to hide the terror behind it. But the terror exists because when you were a child, you knew what the bogeyman looked like. You would see him in your dreams, that black, grinning face with the wicked red eyes. You heard his buzzing voice mumbling to you in sleep when you had nightmares, and you'd wake up screaming for your mother. Admit it, you did scream, didn't you? And now that you're grown up, you laugh about it. Now you're ashamed of your fear, but you're still afraid. You may have learned to sneer at witchcraft and demonology. You read slick scientific explanations dismissing the basic phobias with a psychiatric phrase, mythology, folklore, primitive ignorance. That's what tales of witches and wizards are, aren't they? There is no Satan, no hell, right? Yet, somehow, you can't keep away from such thoughts. You will buy books about the supernatural and patronize horror movies and visit spiritualists and listen to ghost stories and talk about your dreams and speculate on the false legend, even though you parrot the arguments you've learned. You can't keep away from the mysteries, and ever so often you'll find yourself in the darkness with that deep fear, the fear which all bravado and pretending cannot drive from your soul, because you know it's true. There are such things, such forces, such evil, and the bogeyman will get you if you don't watch out. Philip laughed. Now, in the face of all that, is it so difficult for you to understand why your daughter might think I'm a vampire? They all laughed, but Nancy didn't laugh. She crouched under the window and bit her lip. Laura had opened her trap after all, and to him, probably blabbed everything about the food and the bat and all the rest. Now they were having a good time over it. Damn them, she muttered. Philip had keen ears. She heard him get up and come to the window. There was no use in trying to hide. Nancy walked around to the porch and opened the door. Why, hello, my dear. Nancy, back so soon? They were all grinning at her at once. She couldn't look at them. Philip had a big smile on his face, and for the first time she noticed his teeth, his big white teeth, the points hidden under his full red lips. That was all she could see, Philip's teeth gleaming at her. Nancy made the sign of the cross and ran sobbing into her room. The next day they had it out. Laura told her she was acting like a child. She had just embarrassed them to death. But why did you have to tell him about it? Nancy wanted to know. Because he asked us. Asked you? Yes, somebody told him you were making inquiries about him at the store. So that was it. That was why he came up with his long line about the bogeyman. Oh, he was clever, all right, making them think she was just pulling some kid stuff, making them laugh at her. It was no use talking to Laura at all after that. She was just waiting to fly off the handle about the whole thing. Let's skip it, Nancy said, and went out. She sat under the trees for a long time that afternoon, just trying to think things out. After all, she could have made a mistake. There were lots of bats flying around at sunset. A man doesn't have to keep house for himself. He can always eat in restaurants. Maybe he did work all day on his thesis. You don't have to be a vampire to write about demonology. Many people have gleaming white teeth, and nobody had been bitten in the throat or killed or stuff like that. But something was wrong. She felt it. Nancy knew what Laura thought, that she was just burned up because Philip had brushed her off on the date, that she had been reading too much silly stuff in books, that she invented the whole thing just to make Philip notice her. Well, it was true. She did want him to notice her. He was the most attractive man she'd ever met. If only it wasn't true. It couldn't be true. But Philip had no mirrors. She went on like that for hours. It was getting dark before she pulled herself together. Laura and Ralph would be going ahead with supper by now. Nancy got up and started along the path near the lake. She had the jitters all right. The shadows kept jumping around and she walked fast. All at once, something moved out of the shadows up ahead. She nearly jumped out of her skin. Did I startle you? He was standing there. Sorry, I didn't mean to frighten you, my dear. Just standing there, smiling at her. But say, I've been up at the house looking for you. For me? Yes. I wanted to talk to you. Let's take a walk, shall we? Oh, I'm sorry. I have a date. Too bad. I was hoping we might get together. You aren't angry with me about the other night, are you? Not at all. Nancy couldn't figure out what the score was. Philip sounded like an ordinary drip now. Well, she could handle that one. They kept walking along the path. It was getting darker now, and she wondered if the clouds would lift. Not that she was really frightened, but Philip was rubbing his eye. What's the matter? Got a speck in my eye or something. Have you got a mirror in your purse, my dear? A mirror? Yes, if you please. Nancy's hands trembled so she nearly dropped the purse. Well, she got the mirror out and gave it to him. He looked straight into it and rubbed his eye. Nancy leaned over his shoulder and saw his reflection. He had a reflection. She didn't know what she was doing, what she was saying. The words just blurted out. You looked into the mirror. Philip smiled and handed the mirror back to her. Of course I did. And I found that sprig of hemlock on my doorknob last night too. The one you put there when you sneaked off before coming into the cottage to make the sign of the cross at me. Why, don't look so startled, Nancy. I know all about your ideas. You thought I was a vampire, didn't you? She couldn't say a word. She felt as if she would sink right into the ground. But Philip grinned. Just because I work all day and eat in restaurants and walk at night, you wondered about me. My thesis had you puzzled too, didn't it? But you're wrong, you know. Vampires wear long black cloaks, and during the day they sleep in coffins or grave earth. You didn't find any cloaks or coffins when you searched my cottage. But I'm not angry with you, my dear. I just wanted you to get things straight. I wanted you to know that I can touch hemlock and look in mirrors and all the rest. Nancy looked away. The clouds were lifting from the moon, like the weight was lifting from her heart. I see, she whispered. I guess you think I'm an awful dope, Philip. Not at all. He took her hand. A vampire's hand is cold, but his touch was warm. I think you're a very lovely girl. You have beautiful hair, Nancy. Did you know that? Look, the moon is rising, gleaming on your hair. I can see you now. Nancy, you aren't afraid of me anymore. No, Philip. I never was afraid. Not really. I guess Laura was right. It was my subconscious. Subconscious? scientific, aren't we? You know, I must have thought up all this vampire stuff just to make you notice me. And besides, vampires are supposed to be tall, dark, and handsome. Like you. Philip held her very close then. You're a very clever little girl, Nancy. Very clever. It's a pity you had to stir up such a fuss over nothing. But I didn't mean it, really. And it's all over now. Only Laura and Ralph know. Philip didn't kiss her yet. He shook his head. I'm afraid it isn't that simple after all. Like throwing a stone into a pool. Ripples. Ripples? Laura and Ralph will talk to people. Make a joke out of it. Laura has already. She said something to Prentice. Pretty soon people will start whispering, wondering. A stranger is always a suspect, Nancy. Our reputation is a very flimsy thing. It's no use, my dear. I shall have to clear out of here. Nancy couldn't believe her ears. What do you care? She whispered. Let them talk. We'll just laugh at them. I'll laugh at them, said Philip. You won't. He held her very close, and she couldn't see his face. He mumbled against her shoulder. Too bad you were such a meddling little fool, Nancy. But I can't let you get away now. It would spoil everything. You've guessed too much. Nancy pulled away, but he held her. He was very strong. Philip, let me go. He kept pulling her closer, closer. There was no escape. The moonlight was full on his face now, and for the first time Nancy noticed the change. Philip, it's true then. You are a vampire. Oh no, my dear, he whispered. I'm not a vampire. I'm just a werewolf.